Hey, this is Ihab. Welcome to a new 3D video in Maya in Arnold. In today's video, I want to explain the difference between getting ambient occlusion from a traditional rendering process versus a map or PBR material. Okay, what does that mean? When we render materials with textures, it's much better to have what is known as ambient occlusion. So let me show you what the ambient occlusion would look like. And I will explain to you why or what do I mean by the result is better with ambient occlusion. You see here, we do have some concaved areas. We do have some objects that are really close to each other. And we don't always, especially from far away, we don't always really get that look. What we want is to have more of a kind of like an enhancement of the look of the shading between the objects. So to ensure we get that, we create what is known as an ambient occlusion render pass, which means on top of this beauty is the term for it, as you can see here. On top of the beauty, we create a different pass that has only grayscale, and as you can see, it gives you another image that you can do compositing of, meaning you combine the two images together to get a more defined volume of the objects, especially when they're really close to each other. This is the beauty, and this is the AO. I'm gonna copy this, go here, Control V, and what I need to do is to have the ambient occlusion layer on top and then go into multiply blending mode. So with the ambient occlusion, you can see darker details here, or shadows, or volume, and it feels less CG. Of course, that changes quite a bit based on what the actual texture looks like. So for instance, if I had a brighter render of that set of teeth and gum like that, right now it looks more realistic, but without the ambient occlusion, it would just look cheesy CG computer graphic. So it looks fake, in other words. But with that ambient occlusion, it gives it a little bit more feeling of volume. In some cases, you might feel like I'm losing that kind of reflection there, but technically I shouldn't get that reflection because I shouldn't have any implication that there is light coming from inside the mouth. So we wouldn't really normally see that specular unless the mouth is open. So conclusion, this is more realistic. Okay, how does that really tie into the subject of comparing ambient occlusion between PBR and a rendering process? So if I were to render this image out, I'm gonna render this image out, and once it's done, it shows you exactly the time it took to render an image. Because I have the ambient occlusion as a part of the rendering process, and by the way, it doesn't really matter if you change toggle between these passes in the rendering process because it still doesn't interrupt it. So because of the additional render pass, it just makes it more computationally demanding for the computer to render out. So right now, this image took me 28 seconds to render it, so I can have the image of the beauty and also the ambient occlusion. But the other part is I still have to do compositing later. I have to still throw them into Photoshop and do the compositing later, and it's just a hassle. So they decided in the creation of video games to make things more efficient, so our computers can run higher fidelity images and can make the visuals more impressive with the same computational power. Because ideally, you would get really nice, beautifully looking games when you have an active ambient occlusion running in the background, making every single frame you see, but it's just insanely demanding to get that in real time for games. So it is not really feasible. But what is actually efficient is the following. If I go to the hypershade, and the hypershade is that place where I connect images together. In the hypershade, this here is the image of the teeth and the gum, and it's the one that looks like this. Wonderful. In here, I have ambient occlusion as a map. So let me show you what that looks like. This is what it looks like, okay? Kind of strange, I know. Okay, now what I want to do, if you remember, what blending mode did I use in here to connect the ambient occlusion with the beauty? It's right there. Specifically multiply. Okay, so I'm going to disconnect the texture and then create a new node named AI multiply. So I'll take the output color and connect it into input 1. And the output color and put it into input 2. Technically speaking, that multiply is exactly what's happening in here. I am ultimately multiplying beauty versus the AO, so I am faking out the look of ambient occlusion. So in the same process here, I am creating the illusion that I have ambient occlusion, but more efficiently. So now I'm going to plug into the base color of this material. Okay, so let's take a look at the new render. It's still rendering, but you can see it's baking both these images together, and we will be getting the result already composited when it's done. You take that image as just one frame and you run with it. It is the only frame you need to care about. Okay, now that the render is done, let's do a quick comparison. It takes me 29 seconds, so it does take 1 extra second, which in comparison between 28 and 29, it's basically almost nothing. See that shading in there? You don't get that. So it feels like fake, ultimately. Little shading there makes a huge difference. Okay, so in this video, I demonstrated the difference between the two different methods, the two main methods. And also I explained how we blend those images together when we export them as images versus the fact that you get just one image output without worrying about the compositing process. I hope this video helps.